everyone. So I don't know where in the world you are listening from, where you're located, but where I am in Arizona, it is 112 degrees or so. It's pretty crazy. That's what summers are like here. Imagine opening the oven in your kitchen and then climbing inside of it. That's kind of like what it feels like getting into your car. And so I haven't been running as much as I usually do these days. I'm usually running all around my neighborhood. I love running trails, training for big events, but the last few weeks through the summer, I was kind of slowing down and mostly just traveling and eating and not working out. And so this past weekend, I was up in our cabin, which is like 2 hours from Phoenix, and it's cooler weather. And I decided I wanted to go for a run. And so the morning that I woke up, first I set my alarm. The alarm goes off. Everyone else is asleep. The house is dark. And getting up and walking into my closet to get my running shoes was the hardest part of the entire thing. And as I was putting on my shoes, lacing them up, walking outside, I realized that idea of just starting is the hardest part in so many of the hard things that we do. You know, for me, picking up the running shoes, putting them on and walking out of the door, that inertia, that first movement is the hardest part. And so think about in your life, maybe a tough conversation that you've got to have. If you've ever had a tough conversation with a family member or something, maybe dialing the phone is the hardest part. But then once you dial those numbers or you touch their name and it starts ringing, you're like, okay, here we go. No turning back now. Starting is the hardest part. Same thing if you've got a tough conversation at work. If you've ever had to let someone go, calling them into the room or jumping on the Zoom, really, really, really hard. But then once you start talking, it's easier. If you've gotten in front of a room to do a presentation, a speaking event, I don't know if you get nerves. I still get nerves when I do those kind of events. Heart starts beating. You get kind of excited. Maybe you're like catching your breath. But then once you get through a few sentences or a few slides, you start to calm down. Starting is the hardest part. So I headed out on my run, and where I live, the cabin is in the mountains. And so the neighborhood that I live in has all these hills up and down and up and down. And running up the hills, there is no way to sustain the same pace if I was trying to go all out. Like if I was sprinting on flat ground, there's no way I could sustain that up the hills. And so when I go out for these hill runs, I realize I need to slow down my pace and make it sustainable. And so when I went out for the run, my goal was don't ever walk. Just run at the same pace so that you never slow down to a walk. Because remember, starting is the hardest part. So when you start, how do you stay steady? How do you keep your pace consistent? When I was starting Trainual, for instance, every week showing up, it was about how do we consistently make sure we're putting out good marketing content, consistently posting new ads, consistently improving the demos, because week over week over week, that same pace is what creates momentum. Whereas if you work yourself to death one week and you burn out, and then you take a vacation the next week, and then you burn out the next week, that up and down and start and stop is a lot harder than if you can build a sustainable, consistent pace. And so for me, running, it's just putting one foot in front of the other and making sure that I can hold my pace for the entire mileage that I was running around the neighborhood. And it's the same in your business. Make sure you can hold your pace, because that pace builds momentum. And then as I'm running around the neighborhood, I get to this final hill and I'm running up this steep hill, 1 foot in front of the next, 1 foot in front of the next. And I remembered this little trick, which is to smile. When you're doing hard things, a lot of times you've got like the furrowed brow and you're sweating and you're uncomfortable and you're not enjoying it. But you know what happens when you smile? Your entire physiological body, just everything changes, and you realize, okay, I picked this. I chose to do this thing. I can actually find some enjoyment and some joy in this thing that I'm doing. And so just smiling on that last hill reminded me that I actually wanted to go for this run, and it's not so bad. Why don't I look around, enjoy the trees, enjoy the cooler weather? And I did. And so as I finished my run, I was thinking about these things: to start, stay steady, and smile. And so I shared it online and I got some amazing comments. And one of them that I want to call out, it was from Miranda Barrett. So Miranda, shout out to you. She said, when I really don't want to run, my mantra is 1 mile is better than 0 miles. And I give myself permission to just run 1 mile. That gets me out of the door, which is the hardest part. I love that mindset, because really you're making it easier for you to start. you're saying, I just need to get moving. And you know what probably happens is when you give yourself permission to just run 1 mile, you get outside, you feel the air, you start running, you start moving, and then you run 2 miles or you run 3 miles, because now that you've started, every step is a little bit easier. So remember this when you're tackling the next hard thing that you're working on. Just start, take that first step, dial the numbers, have the conversation, whatever it is, and then stay steady. Keep your progress day over day, week over week balanced so you don't burn yourself out, and then smile. Remember, we're having fun. This is okay. We can enjoy this. Take in the sights and the smells and the scenery around you and enjoy the journey.